Come with me on an urban sketching adventure in Central Park's Conservatory Garden. It's a gorgeous day, the sun is shining, it's warm but not too hot, it's not humid, and I have a short work day, so I am going to gather my stuff together and head on out. I am grabbing my current urban sketching sketchbook, which is from Illo. It's 100% cotton watercolor paper. Then I'm grabbing my urban sketching kit. I'm going to take out my normal travel palette and replace it with my new QOR Urban Sketch set, which I swatched out in my last video. I'm going to add my pencil and ink pen in here and then zip this back up. If you want a breakdown of everything else that's in this kit, I'll link my current urban sketching kit below. Then I'm also going to grab my sketchbook just in case I want it. And I'll put all of that in my little tote bag with my water bottle, and I'm also going to grab my walk stool since I have a feeling I'll want it today. And then I'm ready to go. It's so beautiful out that I purposefully went to an entrance fairly far south of where I needed to go so that I could walk up through the park to the gardens. I've never walked through this section of the park before, and this seemed like the perfect time to do it. The Conservatory Garden is up on 105th Street on the east side of the park, and it is the only formal garden in the whole of Central Park. There isn't a fee to get in, and it's really lovely. I've been there before, but only to a small section of it. Most of the garden actually just recently reopened back in June after a 3-year restoration process, so I was really excited to explore the rest of the space. I actually didn't realize just how much of the gardens had been closed until I got there, but there were 2 whole sections that I hadn't seen before, starting with this lovely little garden with stone paths and tons of flowers and plants. And in the center was this really big tree over a fountain with a water lily pool. It was a beautiful little scene. Then, right past that, it opens up into this large rectangular space with these really cool step-like sets of bushes and a curved walkway above a large lawn. The light was hitting this area in such an interesting way, and the arrangements of plants would be such an interesting challenge that I immediately got out my walk stool, I sat myself in a little corner, and had to get started. If you watched my last video, I was swatching out the QOR Urban Sketch Palette. It has 6 half pans inside and 6 empty half pans, and I mentioned in that video that my next one would be me taking the kit out for an actual urban sketching test. I was really excited for this palette because I really want to practice my color mixing, but my main concern after swatching it out was the range of greens it achieves. There isn't an actual green included in the set, and I do love a convenience green. So I figured that this bright green area was the perfect place to experiment with the colors as is, as I decide whether or not I feel like I'm going to want to add one to it. Now, to be upfront, I didn't actually end up finishing this piece on location. I started with my pencil and ink layers, and by the time I was done with those, I was really ready to get going. I felt like I was getting a little bit of sunburn since the light had moved. I was hungry. I'd have to wait for the ink to dry anyway, so I figured I'd do what I often do, which is start it on location and finish it up at home. Ever since I started taking my Illo sketchbook out for urban sketching sessions, I found myself doing this more often because it's a larger size sketchbook than I used to use. I found that, especially if I need to wait for an ink layer to dry, it ends up being a lot more enjoyable for me to get to a location, stroll around, find where I want to draw, sit and draw for a bit, and then if I have time and it's nice out and I want to stay, then, maybe I'll stay there and wait for the ink to dry. But more often, at that point I'm kind of ready to go. I still only used my new QOR palette to paint with, but I did do the painting part back in the studio. So I'm still testing out these colors, and I'm getting a sense of if I'm liking the paints themselves and if I need to add a color to fill in any gaps. But what I'm not going to necessarily get from this experience is a sense of, oh, it takes me forever to mix this color that I use all the time in this small mixing space, and I need it a lot, so it's just making this process annoying. Like, that's not a sense that I'm necessarily going to get here, because that becomes way more clear when you're on location and are trying to finish something up quickly, which is part of why convenience colors are so helpful sometimes if you have a couple of go-tos that you tend to use a lot while you urban sketch. Since I was at home, I took advantage of the opportunity to have more mixing space and brought out my mixing plate, which is just a plain flat plate that I bought for like $2 at TJ Maxx. It's perfect for when you just need somewhere to put a little bit of paint or you just need some extra mixing space. So I'm often using this off to the side when I'm in the studio, and it's not usually on camera, but it's one of the easiest ways to break out a paint color that I don't have in my palette, since I can just squeeze a tiny bit out on the plate instead of having to fill a half pan with it that will take forever to use up. Plus, since I knew I was going to be mixing a lot of greens in here, it actually probably would have been kind of annoying to have to do the amount of greens that I needed in the mixing space that the palette provides. So that is something that I took note of in this process. Before getting this palette, I have swatched out a couple of QOR paints before. I have a couple of tubes, but only a couple, so this is the first time I'm actually creating a full painting with just QOR paints. I like the way that they're flowing, and I really, really like how bright they are. The Payne's Gray is especially easy to re-wet, not that any of them were difficult to re-wet. I found the paints to be very pigmented. And one of the nice things about a limited palette is that you end up with really cohesive colors, since you are using the same few pigments to mix everything. That being said, I do think I am going to add a sap green to this palette. I sort of had a feeling I was going to want to do that going in, and I'm liking the greens here, but I think a warmed toned green is missing. And again, I do a lot of urban sketching and I paint a lot of greenery, and it's honestly just a little frustrating to not have a green in easy reach, especially if you're trying to work quickly. I had a strong feeling I was going to need to do that after the mixing chart from last week, and you know, it also gives me an excuse to buy and try QOR's Sap Green. So as of now, I'm going to add sap green, but try to stop there in terms of adding colors so that I still have plenty of opportunity to practice mixing with a limited palette. Other than that, I'm liking these colors a lot. I will say, and I mentioned this in the last video, that the actual palette itself, the pans that they give you are shallower than normal, and that does make them a little bit annoying to work with, especially because they added a mixing space between the rows of pans, but the lip of it is right up against the half pans. So at the moment, like when you re-wet them and when you activate them, the paint just bleeds out and into the other colors, which I don't love. It's kind of annoying. I would rather them have more of a lip, and especially not like overflow the pans. But that's the palette, and the actual paint is great. If you've made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like or consider subscribing if you want to see more from me, as it really helps out the channel. I hope you enjoyed this palette experiment and found it useful, even if I didn't end up painting on location. This was a really lovely day, and if you haven't been to the Conservatory Garden, I highly recommend that you check it out, especially now that it's back open. I am also definitely looking forward to, using this palette more often and seeing how my experience changes once I add sap green to it. If you've used this palette, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. All of the supplies that I've used will be linked in the description in case you want to check any of them out, and I'll also link my videos on the swatching and mixing chart for this palette, as well as the video for my current urban sketching kit. And yeah, here is the final piece. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.